the Jehovah's Witnesses could lose their tax-exempt status in Australia.
Yay! Hopefully.
This is a huge deal, you guys. This is huge. So, the Jehovah's Witnesses, also known as the Watchtower Organization, could lose their tax-exempt status in Australia because they refused to join a government program to compensate survivors of childhood sexual abuse. In 2013, the Australian government created the, quote, Royal Commission into Institutional Responses into Child Sexual Abuse, end quote, to investigate allegations of abuse in religious and secular organizations. The commission led to the creation of the National Redress Scheme, or NRS, a formal way to monetarily compensate victims for the abuse they experienced. However, for the survivors to receive payment, the implicated organizations had to agree to be part of the NRS system. Thus far, the Jehovah's Witnesses organization has refused to join the NRS program, therefore making it impossible for survivors' applications for compensation to be completed. The Australian government has said that groups that do not join the NRS would no longer be eligible for federal funding and face potential loss of their nonprofit status. So, guys, this is all because the JWs, as they're commonly known, refuse to own up to their history of systematic evasion and cover-up of rampant child sexual abuse within their organization.
I wanted to say a couple things with regard to this. It's also not just that they won't own up to it. It's the fact that I can hear an echo now too, that they have this religious privilege saying that we don't really need to because we have our own internal ways of dealing with this and internal redress in what they call a caring, fair, and principled manner for each claim. So that they say that if this is, sort of, repetitive because they have an internal way that they can do this. But so far there hasn't been shown that they actually do that, any kind of redress. And then also, I also think it's interesting that there were 6 other religious groups or organizations that had also failed to sign up for this, to this particular, club that nobody wants to be in, I guess. But once they heard that they would lose tax-exempt status, etc., they all joined, except for the Jehovah's Witnesses. So I think that that's kind of interesting that their own monetary stuff, where they realize, wow, this is of benefit to us monetarily in a way that, and so I wonder, like, where the Jehovah's Witnesses are going with it. They feel like they're so well financed that they could lose their tax. I just find it really interesting, and their claim that they don't have to do this because somehow they are superior in terms of how they deal with it as compared to this commission that all these other people are joining.
Well, so part of it, I think, has to do with some of the internal beliefs of the Jehovah's Witnesses organization. So it is so for those who don't know, the Jehovah's Witnesses are straight up a legitimate cult. We're not talking about like
you got cut. You got cut, Alyssa. Straight up what? They straight up
destructive cult. Like it's a real cult.
They also don't recognize like the government, or there's only God's law. So you're right.
Yeah, but there's also the belief that they are God's one true organization, and that they have to maintain this image of infallibility, because any questioning of their absolute infallibility just completely decimates like a lot of their internal belief structures and a lot of their authority over their members. So they have to maintain this image that they're perfect. it's very absolutist in the way that it works internally. If you guys want to learn more about the systematic cover-up of abuse within the Jehovah's Witnesses, I encourage you guys to go check out the John Cedars channel. He's an XJW, extremely knowledgeable. He's been a huge activist in this fight about exposing the JWs for a variety of terrible things that they've done, their destructive belief system, but also in particular their systematic cover-up of these abuses. And he was an elder. He was an elder within the organization as well, and he's extremely knowledgeable. But and I thought it was interesting what you were also detailing, Rivka, about the other organizations, because as soon as these other 5 organizations were quote unquote named and shamed, they were like, oh, okay, we fixed it right away. Like, probably they wanted to maintain their image, or they didn't want to lose their tax-exempt status, but they got on board as soon as they were publicly outed as not being part of the NRS system. And it's very interesting, yeah, like you said, like, why do the JWs, or at least the organization, seem to think that they're different and above this?
Well, to your point about their hierarchical belief structure and the truth seeking and all these like terms that they use, I wanted to, just reiterate this point, or maybe make it a little bit more clearly. From what I understand, there's this sense that any secular organization, which would mean outside of the witnesses or not part of the truth, is somehow either a trick by Satan or is of Satan. So therefore you're supposed to limit your contact with non-witnesses and non-witness affiliated things, like, for example, the not voting, the not celebrating holidays, whether they're Christian or secular or whatever country you're in, because they're a worldwide organization. So all of these things kind of go along with their core belief system of, well, we can't associate with the government or any of these other secular type institutions, because that would be a violation of our A, belief system, and B, they're Satan, and they're non-witnesses, and we don't associate with non-witnesses.
Yeah, it's really extreme. And this just reminded me, it makes me so frustrated that these organizations do get federal funding. And that they, an organization as abusive as the Jehovah's Witnesses gets nonprofit status and federal funding. It's insane. This is how I feel about Scientology as well. I think Australia's treatment of Scientology is a bit different. But in the United States, the fact that they're allowed to be tax exempt, I think is I don't even know what words to put on it. It's horrendous. It's extremely well documented that they actively, physically, emotionally, and sexually abuse their own members. Should I read that comment from AGA? AGA is saying the ACL, a lobby group with ties to the current federal government and the Prime Minister, is calling this and making conversion therapy illegal, an attack against religious freedom. Oh, wow. So they're saying that holding the JWs accountable for this is an attack on religious freedom. Are you kidding? I'm so triggered right now.
Another example of people losing their privilege and seeing it as an attack. But go ahead.
I would like to just, to that point, I'll give a quote from Stephen Hassan, who's a cult survivor. He says that you cannot have freedom of religion until you have freedom of mind. And so you do not have the freedom of religion if you're in a group that does not let you have freedom of mind. Meaning, not destructive, not shutting down critical thought, not punishing people who criticize, not ostracizing, abusing, shunning people who leave. And there's also a variety of other things that mark a group as a destructive organization. But those are some of the behaviors that you see in really destructive cults. Katie is saying, do you think it's fair to say that JWs have become their own religion and are not just a Christian sect anymore? I have seen several people say this. It also comes off as defending Christianity, though. Well, I mean, as a Catholic, I clearly believe that they're heretics. Ex-Catholic. They have, I mean, they tried to prophesize the end of the world a number of times. The world was supposed to end in like 1975. Like, they don't believe that Jesus died on the cross. Like, there's a lot of very interesting beliefs. But I would say it's a destructive cult. It's a destructive Christian cult, because they still believe that salvation and achieving eternal life is only possible through Christ, but their specific interpretation of Christ, which is based on a retranslation of the Bible that's completely inaccurate. D. Solomon is saying they don't celebrate Christmas. I remember once at school, I innocently gave a Christmas card to a JW for her only to rip up the Christmas card in front of me. Yeah, because she thinks you're doing pagan stuff, because it's not mentioned in the Bible.
So I want to address what you were saying about, freedom of religion and not before you have freedom of mind. I actually don't think any of these people really want freedom of religion for anybody else. That's the impression, is they're not interested in freedom of religion except for their own religion. And that's not even about the freedom. It's about the ability to, force other people to submit to their set of beliefs. So if all freedom of religion goes away and it's just their religion, that's fine. That seems to be what really is going on with not just the JWs, but with other similar type of groups who are demanding that they get to, apparently, molest children or not have to pay consequences for it, whatever that means, or, abuse people or marry children or whatever it is, under the auspices of religious freedom, aren't really interested in religious freedom. Obviously, it's just a sense of privilege, and they don't care about anybody else's religious freedom. So that's one thing. And then to that point about they're not celebrating Christmas, not voting either, no birthdays.
And subscribe! Everyone! Every single one of you is watching! Subscribe! Do it now! Do it! Do it now!